Hey everyone, it's good to see you. It's Ryan with DP Marketing.Services, author on the book on digital marketing for plumbing and HVAC contractors, also the host of Blue Collar CEO, which you haven't yet. Please subscribe to that podcast on YouTube or Google Podcast or YouTube, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Love hearing from people just like you who find it helpful for their business. So yeah, I would love for you to check it out if you haven't already. Hey, can I watch a video with something that is a really common problem with a lot of people? If you're a plumbing, if you're a HVAC, if you're electrical, if you're a home service company at all, one of the most important challenges for you is to make sure that you have accurate data to make decisions. And by that, I mean, in this day and age, if you're trying to grow your business, you have a lot of information coming from a lot of different sources. And a lot of you will say, like, I love data. I need to get my hands on all the data. The problem is not all data is the same. And if you don't manage your data correctly, you can actually create problems. And the problems with creating, the problem that happens then is if your data is bad coming in, and if you're seeing bad data, then every decision you'll make will be a bad decision. So it's like trash in, trash out. You have to make sure you know what the data is tracking. You can validate the data and what's called attribution. And then you want to make sure that you can actually process it in a way that helps you make better decisions. Otherwise, data is just a bunch of information and it's noisy and it doesn't have a lot of value to you. The goal is to get the information you need to make the most decisions possible. So there are a lot of tools available, and maybe you're doing Yelp, maybe you're doing Facebook, maybe you're doing Google My Business, maybe you're tracking like revenue per technician, like all these things. And you're obviously wanting to get as much of that information in one dashboard, because it's kind of annoying to go to various tools for, okay, here's what we do on payroll, and here's how we pay our vendors, and here's how we do marketing. Like, it's helpful to have, if at all possible, as much of that information in one place. What complicates that further is that some different data sources are going to provide different sorts of data and call it different things. Yelp is a great example. I'm not going to talk about is Yelp good or is Yelp bad. I'm not going to say there, but in my experience, the names that Yelp provides some of the data values is differently than some of those names might be traditionally assigned in other sort of spheres. So for instance, impressions in Yelp might mean something different to Yelp than it would for Google or for Facebook. I feel a sneeze coming on, by the way. So if I have to pull away to sneeze, I'm sorry, and you're welcome. So that's the most random thing I've said all day, and you were here to watch it. So then the thing is, get all that in one spot. There's a lot of tools. If you're using a CRM or an FSM like House Call or Sarah or Service Titan or Skyboss, whatever, there's a lot of different tools and connections that can pull this data in. And then sometimes that data can get lost in transfer or lost in the mapping process. So an example might mean if you have a publicly advertised number and then it gets assigned to an internal number in your software, sometimes those things might not hand off correctly, or sometimes the way in which it hands off might make it difficult to actually understand the flow. Another thing might be like user behavior. So you actually might have the data path mapped correctly, but when your CSR answers the phone, they might do an action which causes that data value to now be assigned differently. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. One of the things that we try to do for every client we work with is to kind of map that data out in a way that's consistent based on the lead source. So in other words, from a marketing standpoint, we have all these different data pouring from all this different information. And rather than trying to reconcile it all to say it's this or it's this or it's this, and try to make it like, make all these tools agree with what the definitions and the data is saying, we try to pull each of them from their source separately and visualize them. So I'll actually show you real quick kind of what it looks like. So I'm going to screen share the thing over here. So this is, for instance, as you know, why? Oh, it just stopped and just went away. Let me get it back up again. As you know, when you want to track, like, is your marketing working, for instance, a lot of people want to measure phone calls. Like, phone calls is obviously a big, important factor. Totally get it. Totally makes lots of sense. It's not the only metric of is marketing working, but it's an important one that a lot of people look to. So because of that, here, let me try scaling this tab again. Here we go. Boop, boop. We provide this data directly from the various data sources. You can actually see over here, here's all the different sources that we can kind of pull in. So pull in SEO, Google Analytics, anything on social, if they're doing any sort of ads. So that's Bing ads, Google pay-per-click, Google local services. We use CallRail primarily for call tracking. There's lots of call tracking tools out there. We tend to lean on CallRail more because we like how the data gets attributed based on the customer flow, not based on the customer last touch. So it seems to have a little bit more clarity on the customer journey, not just the customer destination. But you can see here, like we pull in all this stuff. So here's going to be data from CallRail. We can see all the calls that came in. We can see all the calls, like where they answered or not. All that's directly from CallRail. We're not attributing it in any way. There's no other software getting involved. And if it's a Google My Business call, it's a API connection. So Google My Business is actually feeding that call value over. So there's no like, is this really or is this not? It's like, nope, that's actually a Google My Business phone call. We can see here ads. You can see cost per conversion. Again, all that is coming directly from AdWords. It's not coming from any other source. There's no filtering. It's raw data. We can see website analytics to see traffic over time. We can see SEO value over time. Sorry, this chart always looks bad when we're in a partial month. They're like right now, the data hasn't populated, so this will change later. So it looks weird. It's just part of it. But you can see like, hey, how many backlinks are we getting? How are we doing a Google organic search? Like all these things we can see kind of quickly at a glance. You can see just keyword rankings. You can see things like on social, like how many followers have we gained, lost, what sort of posts are more active. But this data is coming directly from Facebook. It's not getting filtered through any other means. It's literally Facebook's API that's tying it in. And same thing all the way down. We can pull in reviews and reputation. So how many reviews came from GMB or Google Business Profile now? How did people find them? Again, this data comes directly from Google. It's not coming from anywhere else. So no one's getting in the way of saying, hey, I don't understand this or I don't understand that. It's just, this is literally the data from the source that provided it. So if there's any discrepancy on what does what mean, you can go directly to that particular source. And actually for our clients, we actually provide these sort of like tips or screenshots here to help them get definitions to like, what does it mean when Google My Business says discovery, for instance, right? But all this stuff comes together. Now, if you have an FSM or a CRM, we can take this, we can port this data in, but then it's up to our clients to make sure that the stuff is mapping directly on your end. Most of our clients don't give us access to House Call or Service Titan or whatever to actually make sure that from what the CSR sees is lining up to what we see. But from us, we make sure all of our clients see this. So this is raw data coming in, and we want to make sure it's mapped to going out to whatever tool you're using to visualize it. But for us, this is a really good way of getting all these data sources from all these different places. And if it's digital, we can track it. And we pull it all in to actually know what's working and what's not. From there, you want to make sure that you're actually making the decisions that you need to make that are helpful. So if you're, for instance, if this data is correct, but then once it goes into House Call or Service Titan, if there's any sort of attribution link that's broken, if the data isn't mapped correctly, you're not going to be able to know what's working and what's not. You're going to make wrong decisions because you're going to jump to conclusions that are false. And the reason it's false isn't because what you're saying is true, it's because what you're saying is broken, right? But you won't have the insight to know where it's broken. So we want to always make sure we provide source data. Our clients can go through like line by line if they have to and kind of match stuff up to make sure everything's working as it's needed, but full transparency of data. It's really important to know when you're making decisions for your business, you know where the data is from, how it's defined, how it's interpreted, how it's getting mapped out, and how it's visualized in a way to you that helps you make decisions. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And this is a really nerdy sort of rabbit hole, and we can talk about some of the details later. But for this, I just want to underscore this. Make sure you understand what your data is saying. And to do that, you have to make sure that you're tracking the right things and getting it mapped in a way that actually you can see it. It doesn't do you any good at all to get data in and not look at it, right? We had a guy a couple weeks ago was like, I need to see all the data. No problem. Like, he has access to look at this and he's never once logged in. So it's one of these going like, you have the data, it's all at your fingertips. You got to log in to use it, right? You have to. It's your business. You have to understand what it means. If you need help, like understanding what different things is, no big deal. Ask. But when you have the information at your fingertips, if you understand what it is, now you can make good decisions. So I'm curious to hear from you. How do you go about understanding your data? What complications have you had making sure that the data you have is valid or clean or dirty? Leave a comment below. As always, guys, it's good to see you. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, check out our podcast, and we'll see you next time.